What kind of man calmly walks into his home, kisses his children goodbye, and murders them one by one? Meet John List, the man who meticulously orchestrated the ultimate betrayal, a family annihilation that shook America. But what's more chilling than his crimes, the fact that he walked away and vanished without a trace. Until, decades later, the truth finally caught up to him. Westfield, New Jersey, November 9th, 1971. The air was brisk, the suburban streets quiet, a picture-perfect neighborhood where everyone waved to their neighbors and left doors unlocked. But inside 431 Hillside Avenue, the List family's stately Victorian mansion, a nightmare was unfolding. John List was a devout Lutheran, a meticulous accountant, and the father of 3 children. By all appearances, he was the archetype of an upstanding citizen. But behind closed doors, his life was unraveling. His wife, Helen, was struggling with alcoholism and syphilis, a grim remnant from her first marriage. Their marriage was strained, the children were becoming more independent, and John had just lost his job again. John, however, didn't tell his family about the financial ruin looming over them. He couldn't bear the shame. Instead, he spent his days at the train station, pretending to go to work while reading the Bible. He convinced himself there was only one solution, a horrifying, calculated plan. It began like any other morning. John List sent his children off to school, but as they walked out the door, he knew it would be the last time he'd see them alive. First, he approached his wife, Helen, as she sipped her coffee at the kitchen table. Without a word, he raised a .9mm Steyr handgun and shot her in the back of the head. She didn't even have time to scream. He then climbed the stairs to his mother Alma's apartment. She was 84 years old and deeply religious, a woman he'd never dreamed of disobeying. But today, his twisted sense of duty prevailed. He kissed her on the forehead before shooting her. By noon, the house was silent, but John's work wasn't finished. Patricia, his 16-year-old daughter, and Frederick, his 13-year-old son, came home from school later that afternoon. One by one, he greeted them, lured them into the kitchen, and executed them just as methodically. But his plan hit a snag when his eldest son, 15-year-old John Jr., came home from soccer practice. Unlike the others, John Jr. fought back. The struggle was intense, but in the end, John Sr. fired 10 rounds into his son. The massacre was complete. John List wasn't done. Ever the planner, he meticulously cleaned up the crime scene. He dragged the bodies of his wife and children into the grand ballroom, laying them on sleeping bags. His mother, too frail to move, was left upstairs. He then wrote a 5-page confession letter to his pastor, explaining that he killed his family to save their souls from the sins of poverty and moral decay. He was convinced they'd be reunited in heaven. But before he left, he took one more step to buy himself time. He stopped the mail, canceled the milk delivery, and informed the children's school they'd be traveling out of town. Then, he turned on the lights and played classical music on the intercom system to make the house seem occupied. Finally, John List disappeared into the night. The List house stood eerily quiet for nearly a month before neighbors, noticing the lights burning day and night, called the police. What they found inside was chilling. The ballroom was a makeshift morgue, the air thick with decay. Police discovered John List's confession, but he was already gone, vanished without a trace. The case went cold, but the story didn't fade. Over the years, John List became a ghost, haunting America's collective conscience. How could a man so ordinary, so seemingly decent, commit such an atrocity? For 18 years, John List lived a new life under a new name, Robert Clark. He remarried, attended church, and worked as an accountant in Denver, Colorado. His past seemed buried, but in 1989, his carefully constructed facade crumbled. America's Most Wanted, a popular TV program, aired a segment on John List. Using forensic artistry, they created an age-progressed bust of what he might look like nearly 2 decades later. The likeness was uncanny. A neighbor recognized him and tipped off authorities. On June 1st, 1989, the FBI arrested him at his home. Calm as ever, John List insisted they had the wrong man. But his fingerprints told a different story. At his trial, John List sat stone-faced as prosecutors painted a chilling portrait of a man who valued reputation over human life. They argued he had options, bankruptcy, moving to a smaller home, but chose murder instead. The defense claimed List was delusional, believing he was saving his family from eternal damnation, but the jury didn't buy it. In 1990, John List was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms. He showed no remorse, maintaining until his death in 2008 that his actions were justified by his faith. John List was a man who vanished into thin air, a ghost who outran justice for nearly 2 decades. But in the end, no mask can hide the truth forever. His story remains a chilling reminder that the monsters we fear most often live among us, hiding in plain sight.